Okay, so you want to become fluent in English fast, like really fast.
6 months fast.
6 months. That's a huge goal. So we're going to deep dive into some research on whether that's even possible. I know you found some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, this report basically breaks down what fluency means, looks at like all these accelerated learning techniques,
Yeah.
and basically figures out whether 6 months is realistic for most people.
So, like, is it even possible?
Yeah, well, we'll find out.
Cool. Well, let's start with the basics then. What exactly does this report say Fluency is? I know it mentions the Cambridge Dictionary.
It does, yeah. So it defines fluency as speaking or writing easily, well, and quickly, naturally, like without hesitation.
Mm.
And it says, a lot of people think it's all about perfect grammar,
Right.
but really it's about communicating smoothly and naturally, even with a few mistakes here and there.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about getting your message across, right? I noticed the report also talked about core vocabulary.
Yes, exactly. It basically emphasizes having a strong foundation of everyday words is way more important than knowing every single word in the dictionary. And to kind of illustrate that, it talks about the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR.
Right, the CEFR levels. Can you give us like a quick rundown of what those levels mean in terms of fluency?
Yeah, sure. It's basically like a ladder. It goes from A1, which is beginner, all the way up to C2, which is mastery.
Oh, wow.
So B2, or upper intermediate, is generally considered fluent.
Okay.
And the report says reaching that level usually takes around 500 to 600 hours of study. And at that level, you can communicate pretty regularly without too much trouble. Then there's C1, advanced. That's where you can express yourself spontaneously with almost no effort.
Wow.
But yeah, at B2, you can participate in most conversations, understand the main points of more complex things you read, and write clear, detailed text on a variety of subjects.
So that's like a good, solid goal.
Yeah, it is.
I also noticed the report talked about the difference between fluency and proficiency. What's the distinction there?
So this is actually really interesting. Fluency is more about how smoothly and naturally you communicate, whereas proficiency is about your overall command of the language, like accuracy, vocabulary, effectiveness, all that.
I see.
So you could be really fluent, but still make a few grammar mistakes. Or you could have perfect grammar, but speak super slowly. The ideal is to have both, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so let's get down to the big question. 6 months, is that enough time to become fluent? This report talks a lot about accelerated learning.
Right, so basically the report says you have to be ready to study a lot, like 19 to 31 hours per week to get to that B2 level in 6 months.
Wow.
And immersion is really important too, whether that means living in an English-speaking country or creating that kind of environment at home, like active learning, consistent practice, and using technology in a smart way. Those are all key to accelerating your learning.
Okay, so we're talking a serious time commitment here. Like, based on those CEFR hours to reach B2 in 6 months, you got to be pretty dedicated.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's a more realistic goal for someone who wants to put in a ton of effort over 6 months?
Well, the report says that if you go all in for 6 months and you immerse yourself as much as possible, you could probably reach a strong B2 level, maybe even a lower C1.
Okay.
Which means you can communicate effectively in most everyday situations. But native-like fluency is probably a stretch if you're starting from scratch. There are these intensive programs where people can make a lot of progress in immersive environments. They do like 200 to 240 hours of instruction in just one term and see great results.
Wow. The report seemed to really emphasize immersion. Why is that so important?
So basically, immersion means you're constantly exposed to the language and you have to use it in real situations. And that helps you internalize it much faster. The report even mentioned that spending just 1 month living in an English-speaking country can be as effective as a whole year of traditional study. But even if you can't move abroad, you can create a really immersive environment at home. Watching movies and TV shows, switching your phone and computer to English.
Yeah.
And actually like seeking out conversations with native speakers.
Yeah, making English part of your daily life.
Yeah, exactly.
And, if you're listening and you happen to live in or near Dreieich, Hessen, the report mentions some local resources, like Volkshochschule Dreieich, private tutors, online platforms, and maybe even events in Frankfurt.
Right.
Just to kind of boost that immersion.
Definitely. And it's super important to have a structured learning plan on top of all that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The report talks about how valuable intensive English programs, language schools, and online platforms can be. You need to have a plan with clear weekly goals and make sure you're practicing all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
I mean, consistency is key, right?
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
have to practice regularly to really solidify what you learn. Make English a daily habit.
Yeah.
Find ways to work it into your routine.
The report also touched on the fact that there are so many resources out there. Online platforms, language exchange partners, all sorts of things.
Right, and it's really important to stay motivated, especially when you're studying so intensely. Set achievable goals, celebrate your wins,
Yeah.
and find fun ways to engage with the language, like watch movies, listen to music, read books, whatever you enjoy.
That makes sense.
It's also crucial to check your progress regularly and get feedback.
Okay, so to sum it all up, if you're serious about becoming fluent in English in 6 months, be ready for a huge commitment. You're looking at 19 to 31 hours of study per week to reach that solid B2 level. How quickly you progress depends on a lot of factors. Your starting point, how you study, if you can immerse yourself in the language, your motivation. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Native-like fluency might be a bit of a stretch in that time frame, especially if you're a beginner. But you can definitely achieve a strong B2 or lower C1 level if you put in the work and use the right strategies.
Right, and I think that brings up a really important point. Since you're going to be investing so much time, what specific aspects of fluency matter the most to you? Do you want to be able to have conversations, understand technical documents in your field, something else entirely?
Yeah.
Because if you focus your efforts on those specific goals, you'll be much more likely to reach a level of fluency that actually makes a difference in your life.
That's some really good food for thought.
Yeah, I hope so.
So there you have it. That's our deep dive on whether you can become fluent in English in 6 months.
It's a challenge, but it's definitely possible if you're dedicated.
As always, thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
And good luck on your language learning journey.
See you next time.